watching NDTV 24/7.
Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. They received more than 80,000 suggestions, finished their report in a record 29 days. And today, Justice Verma's committee that was set up after the ghastly Delhi gang rape has given a series of dramatic and sweeping suggestions which Parliament now has to consider. Over the next 60 minutes, we will examine some of the key recommendations which, if implemented, will see a sea change in the way India addresses the issue of sexual violence against women. In his press conference that lasted more than 2 hours today, Justice Verma outlined a scathing indictment of governance in India at all levels, blaming this for crimes against women. From his shock that the Delhi Police Commissioner was given a pat on the back instead of apologizing for failing to protect citizens, to his anger at the apathy of state police chiefs, most of whom did not respond to the committee at all. Will the Verma Committee's recommendations be effectively implemented? That is the big debate tonight. But first, let's take a look at the key takeaways from Justice Verma's report. The report does not recommend the death penalty for rapists as many had been demanding. It suggests punishment that ranges from a minimum of 7 years to life in prison. This life term would be the natural life of the accused. Amending the law to include punishment for marital rape for the first time, rape by family members, homosexual rape, stalking, voyeurism, acid attacks. A suggestion to change the Armed Forces Special Powers Act so that special sanction is not needed to prosecute men in uniform for sexual crimes, and that MPs and MLAs should be disqualified if they are charged with any criminal offence.
Awakening and its recognition.
I was a positive reaction to the tragedy which triggered this response of the government would be the real tribute.
Spelling out dramatic, sweeping changes to the current laws on rape and sexual assault, the panel of Justice Verma, Leela Seth and Gopal Subramaniam submitted their over 200-page report to the Ministry of Home Affairs today, recommending no death penalty but minimum 7 years to life in prison for rape. No lowering of juvenile age to 16 from 18 as had been suggested by many including the Delhi police. Reviewing the controversial Armed Forces Special Powers Act in conflict zones. No need for sanction to prosecute sexual crimes by armed forces. Punishment for marital rape, rape by family members and homosexual rape. Punishing voyeurism, stalking and sexual harassment by 1 to up to 7 years. The panel has also slammed the Home Secretary, the police and the man on the street for apathy after the Delhi gang rape.
Police Commissioner of Delhi being given a pat on the back for his prompt action by a person no less than the Home Secretary. I was so shocked.
The police were also hauled up for not responding to the Justice Verma panel's calls for suggestions on changes to rape laws.
The response was expected from all the DGPs. We were addressing him separately. There was hardly any response from any one of them.
They also suggested ending the ambiguity over who was responsible for security in the national capital.
The responsibility and fundamental duty of every citizen of India.
The report is clearly an embarrassment for the government.
अब पुलिस कमिश्नर की कहीं कमी नहीं हो सकती है कि उन्होंने कहा, ये जो मैंने मीडिया में भी देखा, I can't say this is a complete failure of police. I can't. It is an accident.
Government will deliberate on those recommendations and whatever changes are required.
To my mind, no sane person can argue that rape is something done during the course of duty. So I do think it is the duty to amend sections like this.
Justice Verma Committee's report has got a thumbs up from a lot of the activists and the lawyers who attended the press conference. However, now it's up to the lawmakers. Justice Verma pointed out that if they, with their limited resources, could do all this work in just a month, then Parliament should definitely be able to implement all of their suggestions in half the time. Will they be up to the challenge? In New Delhi, Sunetra Chaudhary for NDTV. So Will the government be up to the challenge, as Sunitra said there? Joining us now, the Minister of State for Home, Mr. R.P.N. Singh, is on the phone line with us from Padrona in Uttar Pradesh, where he is currently travelling. Mr. Singh, what is your first reaction to Justice Verma's recommendations from whatever you've been able to read and get a feedback on so far?
Well, Nidhi, I haven't gone through the report at all. I've been traveling. I just got to my constituency and I haven't had an opportunity to go through the report. I have just got bits and pieces on television what he is saying. But one thing I can assure everybody is that whatever recommendations Justice Verma and the panel has come out with, the government will, in all seriousness, try to get it through in Parliament this time, and will try to get all the parties. And there's something that all parties have shown solidarity in moving ahead in amending the laws. So I think this session, the budget session, will have a great discussion on all the suggestions that Justice Verma has come up with, and we will definitely try to implement them as soon as possible.
What is the immediate step though? Would you be calling an all-party meeting on Justice Verma's report and having a discussion with all political parties first?
No, Modi, officially my ministry has not actually received the report as yet. Once the report comes to the ministry, we will go through all the suggestions that Justice Verma has come out with, and then from there we will take it forward, Nidhi.
But you're saying that there is a commitment that you will implement at least whatever can be implemented in the budget session, which is next month.
Well, Nidhi, we had already moved amendments as far as all the laws are compared for women, harassment against women. In fact, we're going to see Justice Verma has added something new to the things which are already in Parliament. So if there is anything, other suggestions that have come, we will definitely look on them, and whatever is possible, try to implement all of them.
Mr. Singh, Justice Verma also had a pretty scathing indictment of governance in this country. It wasn't, just the suggestions that he listed out, but what he said on the failure of governance at all levels. He says that failure of good governance is the obvious root cause of this problem, not more legislation. How would you react to that?
I think that is something we all have agreed upon. It's that we have a lot of laws, Nidhi, but the deliverance is something that we really need to look at, be it the justice system, be it policing, be it the government. It's the deliverance of all these things that we actually need to take a real hard look at, because we have many laws, but the deliverance has been very poor, and that is one of the reasons I think why these kind of incidents have continued to happen. And I think just by I agree completely with what Justice Verma says, that deliverance is what governments need to look at, and state governments or central governments, that's the deliverance, and we have to come to a mechanism where we could actually see that deliverance takes place in a very short period.
There was also a very strong statement from Justice Verma, and he said it was laughable actually, and I'm quoting him here, that he expected all the DGPs to actually respond to the committee, give their suggestions, but that he hardly got any response from any one of them. He said that this is the apathy of the DGPs and something needs to be done to review the appointment of these DGPs. Isn't this a big disappointment that most state police chiefs didn't think it was important to talk to this committee?
I'd just like to add something there, Nidhi. After this horrific incident that happened, my senior minister had called a meeting of all chief secretaries as well as DGPs, and they in fact had given some very good suggestions to the Home Ministry on how we could actually bring about changes, and in fact that has been documented, and that also I think we will put up in Parliament when Justice Verma's report comes through. So in fact in that meeting held by the Home Ministry headed by Mr. Shinde, it was very clearly stated that the DGPs and the chief secretaries came up with some very, very good suggestions, which we would also like to incorporate.
But why not make those suggestions to Justice Verma's committee, which was set up with a specific purpose? And Justice Verma also said that those actually responsible for asking us to set up this committee and give this report didn't give their suggestions until the very last minute, till last night. I think that is clearly him pointing in the direction of perhaps your ministry.
Well, Nidhi, we already were in Parliament with a lot of amendments in Parliament to change these laws. So I think we are anyway, all the report when Justice Verma is going to give it to our ministry only. We are going to mull over it and then pass it on to Parliament to make it goes to the Cabinet, and then the Cabinet takes a decision, and then it goes to Parliament where it will be debated, and whatever is possible, we'll try and come out with the amendments which he has recommended. And I think we have tried to take on board, even the Home Ministry has had a lot of consultations, and I think all these consultations will all help us in making a better, safer place for.
If that's the case, then why is Justice Verma so upset about the DGPs, about those who were responsible for setting up this committee?
Maybe
he's very visibly upset about it.
Well, maybe I will not be able to answer on that particular point.
Let me ask you one final question. Another thing that Justice Verma said was how he was shocked that the police commissioner got a pat on the back by the Home Secretary, no less, instead of actually eliciting an apology from him for not being able to protect citizens. When you look back at how this has been handled, do you think that the police commissioner could have at the very least said, "I'm sorry this happened on my watch"?
Well, maybe I would not make any comment on what Justice Verma has said in his press conference. I can assure everybody, whatever his recommendations and whatever his suggestions are, the Home Ministry is going to look at it and implement and do whatever it can to improve itself.
All right, Mr. R.P.N. Singh, the Minister of State for Home Affairs, the first reaction from your Home Ministry then today on Justice Verma's press conference and the recommendations which everyone is still going through. It's a very exhaustive report. It runs into hundreds of pages, and till I last checked was still not uploaded on the Home Ministry website because it's still under construction. Let me turn to our panel now, because what we're really debating is that while there are these far-reaching suggestions by this panel, will they be effectively implemented? The key question is implementation. And joining us tonight, we have Mihira Sood, who's one of the lawyers who assisted the Justice Verma Committee in preparing this report. We have a rather senior lawyer who's worked closely and has given her suggestions to the panel. Vrinda Grover is with us. We have Meenakshi Lekhi, who is a senior lawyer herself, and also the head of the BJP Mahila Morcha, National Vice President. We have Mr. Ved Marwa, former Police Commissioner of Delhi, former Governor of Manipur. Ranjana Kumari, the Director of Centre for Social Research, is also with us tonight, and hopefully we will be joined by a representative of the Congress Party. Yes, we have Renuka Chaudhary there joining us on the show tonight. Let me get first reactions from everyone. First from Vrinda. What do you think, in a nutshell, of today's report?
I think there's a paradigm shift that we can see in understanding and legislating for laws relating to women, particularly laws relating to violence against women. It has been rooted in the Constitution. There is a Bill of Rights. It has been rooted in a context of inequality and discrimination, and there is a shift in looking at violence against women and comprehending it and seeing it from the perspective of women, and the language of bodily integrity, dignity, and the chucking out of words like modesty, etc. has begun. Also looking at women in different scenarios, in conflict zones, under disturbed areas where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is in operation, in women suffering from disabilities, rights of women towards safe spaces, what is governance and planning to do with the safety and security of women, and very crucially, acknowledging if this is a violation of the bodily integrity of a woman, then there can be no space for things like marital rape. And that is the step forward that we are taking. Now, of course, the challenge is whether the Parliament is up to this modern thinking.
Mihira, how difficult was it to prepare this report in a record 29 days? And to it's a very vast report, very broad-based suggestions, it's very, very broad in its terms. How difficult has this been?
It's not been easy. Look, the reason it's very broad is because there's no point saying you're just going to amend Section 375, 376, 354, Evidence Act, etc. If you're looking at gender justice, if you're looking at crime against women, if you're looking at safety or protection, then you need to target every single system that is responsible in any way contributing to this, and that whether that includes your police, whether that includes politics, whether that includes public spaces and urban planning, whether that includes street lighting, legislative reform, khap panchayats, armed forces, all of it. So it was necessary, and all of us understood from the very beginning that this cannot be limited because it will not achieve anything. In terms of difficulty, yes, it was exhausting.
29 days is quite remarkable.
29 days. All of us who've been working with them have given our all to this. But if you go through it, you find that much of it was collating
violating measures that already exist and have not been implemented. And that, I think, is the greatest indictment, because it is not just about whether or not we have the infrastructure for this. This is all, these are all measures for which we already have the infrastructure. Everything is in place. You don't even need political will. Circulars have been issued from time to time. Directions are given in various departments, and none of it is implemented. That is the greatest indictment. But one of the remarkable things I think about this report that is a departure from previous ones, and just to take off a little bit on what Brinda was saying, is that this is not rooted in a concept of protection or safety, or it is rooted in a discourse of rights and sexual autonomy and safety and protection only as measures to realize those rights that are inherent in everyone.
Widening the definition of what constitutes sexual violence.
It is not about doling out protection.
I want to talk now about the specifics in terms of implementation. And the first thing I asked Mr. Marwa this first is, realistically, how well do you think this can be implemented? Because when you look at the fact that the DGPs don't think it's important to even talk to the committee, it's more important to have a meeting with the Home Minister, and Justice Verma's anguish on that point, that tells you that there is a big picture problem here.
It is the very fact that this committee has given its report in 29 days, such an exhaustive report. It is because it is well known what has not been done and what needs to be done. And that is where the problem lies. If the government thought that setting up of Verma Commission will only buy them time and then the business can go on as usual, I must compliment the Justice Verma Committee that is not going to be the case. He has given specific recommendations. There are two categories of recommendation. One which require amendment to law. But there are a number of other recommendations which require no amendment of law. They can be implemented by executive order. Why delay them? And as far as your question about the DGP is concerned, I think the responsibility lies entirely on the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Ministry of Home Affairs, as the Minister has just said on your program, that they convened a meeting. They had the recommendations of the DGPs with them. Why didn't they give it to the Minister of Home Affairs?
Which is what I asked as well.
And even the Ministry itself didn't give its own recommendation to the Home Affairs.
To the very last minute.
Shows how seriously we are taking these recommendations. If wisdom dawns on them now that those days are gone when the media and the people at large will let them get away by stalling for time, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, and they, with the elections just about a year away, and I think they better wake up, because it is a very, very serious thing. And the Justice Verma Committee has touched upon some very, very serious issue concerning criminal justice system. And if the government doesn't look at them seriously and do something about it, I think we are in great trouble.
But do you think there's a lack of seriousness by the way they have behaved on this so far? A certain lack of...
Obviously, there's no doubt about that.
Okay, I want to take that to Renuka Chaudhary first. Renuka Chaudhary, as someone, who has been talking on this issue passionately for weeks now, is it a disappointment that DGPs are not taking this seriously, that the Home Ministry didn't appear to be taking it seriously either till the very last minute, putting off what it was supposed to tell the committee, and this is something Justice Verma has said on record today?
I don't think we should look at it that way. This is precisely the challenge that we have ahead of us. It doesn't matter what they did or did not do. The point is that we have a recommendation today by Justice Verma. It's a 600 and odd page report, and I think we should look at it in a positive way. It's about changing these attitudes and bringing these people on board.
But that's precisely the point I'm making, that we're going to be able to implement this, these suggestions, these recommendations which are so critical and so crucial. When state police chiefs don't think it's important to interact with the judge heading the committee, when the Home Ministry doesn't think it urgent enough to give its recommendations to the committee in time, that just reflects a worrying mindset to me.
No, fair enough that we must remain concerned and look at all possible lacunas. But I do think that number one, the time constraint for the police, because they are overextended with the 26 January, the 26th January security measures, and it is a huge chain of command which they have to make sure that the nation is secure. So I'm not making excuses for them, but I do believe that for whatever reason they have, I know that they have been working overnight and stretching themselves over these issues. But that doesn't mean that they're not involved and they can't. Now it remains with the government and us collectively to ensure that this passage of rights will go through and that these changes which are recommended will be incorporated by the media, by the public representatives, by Parliament, which is going to come into session in the end of February, third week of February. And I would like to remain personally very, very optimistic that we should be able to carry
I wish I could share that optimism. I mean, the Delhi police backed out of our program today after Justice Verma's press conference. I wonder why. And we were also told suddenly that they were very busy with Republic Day after agreeing at first to be on this program. Meenakshi Lekhi, you know, I'm first worried about implementation because people in authority, you know, have to have that mindset, you know, this is important, this is urgent, and that urgency, like Mr. Marwa also pointed out, doesn't seem to be there.
You see, my point is picking up from whatever everyone else has already stated. There is a paradigm shift. Women issues are taking the center stage of political discourse, and which is very, very important as a nation for all of us. And again, taking from whatever everyone else has said, and I've already stated in my letter, that there are three major things which have already existed on the statute books and otherwise. One is a 1994 judgment, which is a Supreme Court judgment, which lays down 8 parameters, 8 guidelines, which till date has not been implemented because there's no money, no decision about how the budgets need to be arranged and how things have to be managed. The second part is 172nd report, which is a law commission report, which has also existed from 2003, and from that time, except an amendment which was brought in by the NDA, post that there has been no discussion, no shift, nothing at all in that. And then third is there is number 3 2010 standing committee order of the Delhi police by the Home Ministry, and Home Ministry's guidelines as to what all needs to be done for the safety of women. Now these things have already existed for so many years, and yet no decision was taken, and as Mir rightly put it, that all these things have been in public purview till date and not a thing has been implemented. So work boils down to implementation. That is one side of what is
would you acknowledge that's politically across the board?
I'm saying that. I'm saying that the political discourse around women issues has not existed, and this is this case, because I did a matter in 2003-04 when this Maulana Azad, I heard somebody refer it to Maulana Azad case, but along with Maulana Azad there was Shanti Mukul matter, if everyone can just go back and recall. Around that period, whatever was relevant at that time, now Justice Verma may say that 18 is the right age for juveniles, whereas I may say it should be 16, but there should be a debate in the Parliament on that. There has to be a debate. People may agree, people may disagree, people are free to disagree. Now, one has talked about death penalty, and it is not for rapists, it is for people who have committed murder, and which already exists on the statute books, and according to me, it forms rarest of rare punishment, and that should be implemented. Where people like me are talking about implementation, attempt to murder is punishable by the similar imprisonment. That goes unchallenged. People who have attempted the murder, the person may have survived, but the person from his point of side has completed the act. Why should those not be implemented? Now, human rights groups may have certain point of view. Rest of the country may have
I'm going to get to that. So on the issue of punishment, I just want to first ask Ranjana Kumari her first comments on the report. Ranjana, what are the doables? First off, what do you think can be done right away?
Well, I think, as everybody said, that this is certainly a shift in understanding the way sexual offences have been looked at till date. In a a society where men think they have a right over women's body. Even rape in marriage has been recognized, acknowledged, and suggestions have been made. Where people don't pay attention to what is happening in our northeast, in Kashmir, in all the other areas where rape goes with impunity because it is the armed forces or it is the police which is doing it. So all kinds of issues have been brought in. But maybe I was listening to the state home ministers rambling about, continuously saying deliverance. I think it's the indictment in the report about governance, and they failing to deliver. I think who will deliver? This is I'm really sometimes puzzled and shocked in the way politically correct language have been spoken on the television. Everybody is making suggestions. There are suggestions in Home Ministry, there are suggestions with police, there is now this whole report of 600 pages which really speaks volumes about the spirit of the way women's movement, women's groups are thinking, human rights groups are thinking. Everything has been very, very nicely, correctly reported in this whole recommendation, whether it is IPC, CRPC, whether it is Evidence Act. I think everything has been covered. So who will deliver it? I'm really worried because you see the way they have treated the commission. No serious officer. You're talking about police. I'm saying there were people supposed to have come from Women and Child Development Ministry, Home Ministry. I don't know. There were so many government officials were listed. Nobody showed. Very, very, very marginal officers from those ministries showed up who have hardly any power, who can hardly do anything about, they had hardly anything to say to them. Because I also, as part of the deliberations, made a presentation to the commission. I know that in the end we have to see that the parliament, even Justice Verma himself is hoping, I suppose he's praying that somebody will look at this report and will discuss it inside the parliament and things will change. I want to say that there are many who probably did that. Yes, and being done, there are which are already not delivered. I can just bet on that comment. I can just bet that mostly no government thought it wouldn't be done and it would be another extension of yet another commission. It would go on and on. I want to come to some of the specifics. Okay, when this horrible rape happened, Vrinda, there was a clamor among many of the protesters for the death penalty. The BJP also talked about the death penalty. It is not there in the report. Do you think that the way they have suggested punishment, life in prison, which would include until the natural life of the person, that is a strong enough deterrent?
There are two things. All rapes are horrible. I think what the committee has done is to look at the judgments of the Supreme Court, look at international law jurisprudence, look at what have been the studies that have been done on prison reform, and then come to the conclusion that death penalty, and a very strong statement put out by the women's movement from across the country saying death penalty is not the solution to safety of women, and they took all that into cognizance, they analyzed it, studied it, and then came out with this suggestion. I personally do not think life imprisonment for the remainder of one's natural life is necessarily the way forward. I think we need to classify it, because then we're throwing out completely that there is absolutely no possibility of any reform. That's a separate debate. It needs to be done. I would really urge that we do not allow this debate. There are very, very important things that have come out in this committee report, and all one is hearing is everybody wants to go back to the conversation on death penalty. The conversation needs to be put out. What are the deliverables? Every political party should tell us within 4 days from now, maybe Monday, good time after Republic Day, they have a long weekend, tell us after 4 days, each political party puts out what they agree, what they disagree. Let the people, let the young people, let the women of the country who stood outside and demanded this change know where the political class stands today. Before the parliament session, we need to know, do they agree that sexual violence against women needs to be looked at holistically? Do they understand that this is an issue about equality of women? Do they understand that police will be made accountable? That the armed forces will not act with impunity? Will marital rape be seen as a crime? I would want to know from every single political party where they stand, and that's what the people of this country
Those are definitely the more substantive issues. And the reason I asked about the punishment issue first is because, Meenakshi Lekhi, it was something that immediately struck a chord with people. When he said it was a very emotional reaction that people had, even the BJP. When you look, though, at the suggestions made on punishment, are they good enough?
No. You see, as Vrinda has said, there's a definite debate about, a different debate about punishment part. and which one needs to look at, and who's going to look at has to be the Parliament. You and I can debate here, but is of very little relevance till it is converted into law. And so far as the other suggestion, what I was coming to was before whatever we have started with, was how this particular Verma committee, and it's not a reflection on Verma committee or the work they have done, I think they've done tremendous work, at the same time the government's mindset. And there I've analyzed three major things which are already on board, which could have been implemented immediately, which have not been, and there could have been a parliamentary session which could have discussed all this and more, which has not happened. Somewhere the idea was just to subside the anger. This Verma committee was set up, and similarly Usha Mehra committee is not going to suggest anything fresh which does not already exist on the books. So end of the day, these commissions and committees are set up new things. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Let's not overlook. No, I'm not overlooking. What I'm trying to suggest, there is enough. There is already enough on the papers which is doable, which is implementable, and that implementation has to happen from the Parliament. So a special session of Parliament specific to these provisions need to be called, and that is the call of the day. Mihira, I want to get you in on that.
I think it's a bit of both. There are, as Binda rightly pointed out, there are several new suggestions in this report that will require political will and consensus across political parties, that there's no getting away from. Yes.
What do you think are the three toughest ones?
Electoral reform, amendments to the Representation of People Act. We've given a schedule of offences that need to be covered for disqualification of any elected MP or MLA. That I think is going to be incredibly tough. Marital rape, I think, will be really tough. I don't see any consensus building on marital rape anytime soon. Armed Forces Special Powers Act.
But you're right. These are probably difficult. I just want to get an actually here on that. I mean, do you think that marital rape, something like marital rape, it's about time that political parties woke up to this reality?
It's not my personal opinion. It needs to be debated within the party, and a particular, because whatever I may say personally, I can debate it on the correct party platform and come back to you on that, but this is the party stand. Personally, I may have a different point of view, but I'm not here to air my personal point of view. I'm here as a representative of a political party. And we have still not got the report, so I need to look at it differently.
Yeah. Mr. Maya, how difficult do you think it will be the issues that Mihira flagged in particular?
These issues are important, but I don't think that this takes away the importance of other recommendations. There is no point delaying implementation merely because these are two issues where no political consensus is going to be reached, because that is precisely what people do not do anything and want to happen, and that is precisely what we should be guarded against. It's very important. I think the point which has been suggested by Binda, if I may, is very important, that the political parties now have been thrown a challenge by Justice Verma committee report, and they should come up to that challenge and give their categorical views on issues in which there is no confusion. This is
that is doable.
They're doable, and everybody will agree with it. It's only when it comes to implementing those recommendations that they hum and haw. They won't disagree with these recommendations, and those recommendations are very important, because the governance and the points which I was raised about the criminal justice system, particularly the CBI, the police, the Delhi system, the type of government which Delhi is having, all these things they have referred to, and these are issues which needs to be sorted out, because otherwise this confusion will continue to happen, and the fact that they made these remarks about the Home Secretary also, I think, needs to be taken seriously. I think Home Secretary got his priorities wrong. They are not making any personal criticism of the Commissioner. What they are saying is that protection of women in the capital is a very important thing which the Home Ministry should be concerned with, and that is hardly an issue on which the
Very quickly, I think two things. One is that Home Minister was only following the Home Secretary and and the Commissioner of Police were only following the diktat which was given to them. Number two, so far as common things, I think Brinda has correctly pointed out, there could be say 20 things which are common, which everyone agrees on. So let's implement that. Let's begin with that. I think it's a perfect suggestion. So at least, but it can only happen once there is a meeting, either an all-party meeting or.
Renuka Chaudhary, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, the new Vice President of the Congress, had a long meeting with all of you all today. I would like to know whether you think that Mr. Gandhi will chair any meeting on the Justice Verma report in the next week, and actually have an serious discussion in the Congress. Would you think that should at least be done?
Read.
What we discuss internally is not really for public consumption, but we assured that Mr. Gandhi will be addressing all issues which is going to be the way forward for a safe and secure nation. There are no two doubts about that. But I am a little saddened. The whole panel is discussing a whole lot of issues, and no one has really addressed that the Justice Verma Commission for the first time has really addressed the issue of children and sexual offences against children, which for me is a huge priority issue because it robs a child of childhood. And at least here they've emphasized on these issues, and juvenile homes, which is a huge area of neglect, and they have made recommendations of that.
I first want to come to you on the question of the political commitment.
It's very easy to slam the government.
The point is the Congress.
I'd like to say something.
Why is there a doubt in anyone's mind about this?
But can you say that it will be time bound? In the next 7 days, the Congress will come up with a position on the Verma Committee report. I know it's 600 plus pages.
Listen, first of all, we cannot go by television programs to decide in how many days we are going to announce something.
It's a suggestion made by lawyers now.
To compromise on the quality of decision making. No. And we really can't respond to people who say that they should be done in 3 days or 5 days or 7 days.
Okay, you give us a time frame, ma'am. Please, I want the BJP and the Congress to be able to get the women of these. So that's very about to change it.
They're discovering I think, Nidhi, there is a kind of discovery. It looks like almost as if children have not been violated sexually or offended. Children homes are run in pathetic condition.
That will be your perception,
Women and child discovery.
You have conveniently forgotten that this is an issue I've always battled about.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So you should not say
and you don't realize the challenges in society about dealing with such issues.
Renuka, listen to me.
Right, you'll get more mileage just doing this kind of job.
In 68 years, you are discovering things. After 68 years, who will do it?
Please tell me what in your forum is ladies, when I've been an activist,
our question to you.
My simple question is that can we have a time?
Not take 10 days, take a month.
Yeah,
but come up with some kind of a concrete response to the report.
Yes. Tell us we'll take
Thank you very much.
We're not saying
thank you for being the Chief Justice in this issue and giving us time about how much time is available to us. Thank you very much. I would also like to know you have been
issues are very serious for us. We really can't waste time like this.
So you're not getting a commitment, okay?
On any party. From any party. Vrinda, I've told you I'll get back to you by Monday. I only need 21 pages to read. All of us will be reading those pages. That's exactly my point. So you have to give me the copy. You have not even given me the copy as yet. It's up on the internet. I'm sure BJP knows how to access. It is not. It is not as yet. Getting back to, don't BJP unnecessarily. When we're talking about all political parties because you guys sit in parliament, so you have a responsibility. Meera spoke about some of the hard issues. Let's talk about some of the other issues.
Okay, let's talk about the globals. Let's talk about what can be done. Number one.
Everybody in this country across the board has criticized and condemned the police. The Verma Committee has given certain way forward, both legislative and others. They have said that if a policeman does not lodge an FIR, there will be punitive consequences for it. Will there be political consensus for this? We need to know. They've also said that they've introduced, very importantly, the doctrine of command responsibility, which means that if your junior officer, subordinate to you, commits a crime, and you know about it and you do nothing, then not only does that officer, but the supervising officer, the senior officer, is also criminally liable. Now, if the political class is not going to be protecting the police and others,
as well.
so let's see where does all this protest lead? Does it eventually lead to the citizen's safety and security, or is the power still stuck in the political class and the police authority? That's the shift that the Verma committee is suggesting, from state power to citizen power. And there are issues of electoral reform, there are issues of Kap Panchayat, there are issues of safe spaces for women. Will we see a budgetary allocation?
All of which are difficult. I mean, Kap Panchayats are politically patronized in this country.
Everything is political. Are we going to see a budgetary allocation for safe spaces for women? Or is the money again going to go to certain other defense, etc.?
Let me ask the politicians. Let me ask Renuka first. On this issue of electoral reforms, again, very important suggestion in the Verma committee report about disqualifying MPs and MLAs who face charges in heinous crimes. Why isn't that doable? Because it's something that the Election Commission has struggled with for years unsuccessfully.
Didi, who says it's not doable? It's already existing. Anyone convicted in a crime cannot contest. What's the big deal?
It's not.
This is not about convictions. This is about those who are charged with a serious offence.
Yeah.
It's different.
But don't you think there has to be a sense of natural justice?
See, but then there you go.
The law should follow its own process. Can we subvert the law and say that now that you are charged, you are disqualified without finding out what the end result is?
So you think that's unfair?
Maybe a court is willing to come up with a debate that.
Maybe you have to ask the question, when court takes the cognizance, that means the charge sheet has been prepared and court is taking the cognizance. You should not wait for the case to be completed and concluded and conviction to be made, but you have to recognize, the committee has recommended, and I think 2 judges were on the committee, so I don't think they are subverting the law. They are saying that take cognizance, because it is the political class which is getting away with impunity. They are the ones who are committing sexual crimes and sitting inside the parliament and state legislatures. We should not allow that to happen, or that will happen. Very cognizance is being taken.
In a sweeping generalization that the political class is committing rape, I think that is absolutely slanderous for you to talk like that. It's
320 are there. 320.
Yes, sensationalism.
320.
You are just sensationalizing it. I belong to a political class, and I don't think the majority of us would even think of committing rape.
Yeah.
No, but the point is, ladies, one second. There are a large number of legislators in this country who face very serious charges. Given the way that our justice system is, you will not have convictions for 20-30 years. If there is a court that has taken cognizance of an offence,
I don't think you should talk like
shouldn't they step aside? I think that's what the panel is trying to say. Shouldn't they step aside for the greater good?
Yes.
Because clearly, I'm asking you this because it's clear from your reaction that this will be probably one of the hardest things to implement.
It's not the hardest things, Nidhi. It's a sensibility that has been addressed, and it is rightly so. We stand by that. But I really intensely dislike this kind of sweeping generalization. It's very fashionable to talk like this on national airtime and say that, oh, the political class are committing rape and the political class. I mean, this is rubbish. I take strong objections to that.
Okay, I want to get Mihira in on this.
You don't talk like that just for your 2-minute airtime and sensationalizing yourself.
Respond to that.
Okay, Anjana, respond to that briefly, please. Please respond to that briefly. Let's everybody calm down. I'll get Mihira to you.
Renuka, I think Renuka knows, and she knows and she recognizes that there are about 320 legislators and members of parliament in different states.
Out of how many, Ranjana?
Also in the parliament.
How many people?
Listen to me,
In the
Renuka.
parliament and assemblies, out of how many?
Even one section of Renuka, I think you stand by that. If one section of India is sitting in India's parliament, we are ashamed of it. Even one sexual offender is sitting inside India's parliament, even one criminal is sitting inside India's parliament. It has a big reflection on our democracy.
trying to
I think
say?
we have to accept some of these hard facts.
Don't give me
Instead of trying to rubbish everything.
No, this is
we
not
have to
rhetoric
come
what you're giving.
forward for change.
All right, 1 second.
No, it's not rhetoric, it's well-studied data.
Okay, ladies, Mihira Sood, you just heard the first reaction.
righteous
First
about
political
change and
reaction
you're
to
the only
political
one
parties.
who's
Wait,
the
one
agent
second.
of change and the political class doesn't want change. What makes you assume that?
I mean, I think
Because
when I was
Verma
debate,
Commission
Justice
is
Verma
not
slamming
ladies, 1
politicians
second,
all
I'm
the
going to play the
time.
audio. Mihira, I want you to come in on this. You just heard the first political reaction to this very important recommendation. So I guess this fits in with what you just said, that this is going to be a tough task.
It is, and I think that's obvious to anybody. I mean, I'm not here as a representative of the Justice Verma Committee. I'm speaking as somebody reading the report. I think it's obvious to anyone that this would be the most difficult one to implement. And as far as the data and statistics are concerned, there's a wonderful organization called the Association for Democratic Reforms. They publish the data on each and every political party, what offences every candidate, every elected member of every state legislature and of parliament have been charged with, how many of them have been charged with offences against women, percentage-wise results. I would just suggest go through the data.
Okay, I'm going to get last comments. Mr. Marwa, you first, and then Brinda. Yes.
Well, there were already this discrepancy in a candidate filing his nomination, whether he is charged and he is ineligible, and a member of parliament or a MLA. So I think this has already been, it is before the Supreme Court, and we don't know what judgment is going to be given. But I think this is a point which is debatable and needs to be settled, and I hope the Supreme Court will settle it. But at a larger issue, I think it is the practicability of it should be seriously considered, because if a police investigation, as we've seen the way the police is politicized these days, a charge sheet from the police side is not very difficult to manipulate. Again, a charge sheet at the judicial level, because again a charge is framed after a few hearings. And then again, one has to see at what level. But I am not giving my opinion on one side or the other. It's a debatable issue, and very serious attention should be
I think the
paid.
important thing you said is that those things that can be done, do them right away. Don't let anything stop you, even if there is a debate on other aspects of this report.
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
that's been the key takeaway. Quick last comments.
You see, I'm coming to the rescue of Renuka for a change, and that is presumption of innocence is also a concept in judicial reforms and judicial thinking and jurisprudence. So I think the best way out in such situation is absolutely expeditious trial. I mean, if there is an MLA MP involved in a rape case, do the trial in 15 days and get over with it. And if he's convicted, bar him, throw him out. That is the way out. There has to be a balance between two opinions. One is presumption of innocence, and the other is that all such people who are in authoritative position can abuse that position to reach at it. I think to strike a balance, have a quick trial.
Okay, Mihira and Brinda.
There are 2 points I want to make in response to both Meenakshi and Renuka. The first is, people occupying these positions need to be seen to be clean. There is a concept of impeccable integrity. They need to be, as our Prime Minister keeps saying, Caesar's wife needs to be above suspicion.
Absolutely.
And
But
on
of false charges also.
just ethically, once somebody is charge sheeted, they should step down. Secondly, the second point I want to make is, I think that the political reaction to this, to say you're tarring us all with the same brush, we will not discuss, this is just defamatory, I think it reflects the larger problem that we have of refusing to look inwards when it comes to a problem like this.
Both things. I think there are 2-3 things. I think the 2014 elections round the corner, many of us will actually be watching political parties regardless of whether there is an amendment in the law or not. But how many tickets are being handed out to those who are actually charged or even charge sheeted with crimes against women? And a very large percentage of our voters today are women. So I think political parties need to be a little bit careful what they're doing with this. Secondly, I'm going to repeat my request that please give us a reasonable time within which political parties will give us their response to the Justice Verma Committee report. Good, bad, ugly, whatever the response is. Thirdly, there is a bill pending before Rajya Sabha committee called the Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2012 dealing with the issue of sexual violence. Some very important recommendations are here. Those recommendations were only as recent as August 2012 made by women's groups. We hope that now that bill will be completely redrafted. And lastly, Parliament needs to go beyond histrionics that we saw in the last session and actually pay heed to the recommendations. We are going to be watching what is going to be implemented.
There's a lot of pressure on them to do it in the next session.
Can I just add one thing? I just want to make a minor point here. Presentation represents me as a member of the Verma committee. I just want to clarify, I was only a council assisting the committee.
Assisting the panel. I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us tonight. What we're going to do on the program tomorrow is take a look at one or two specific issues that the Verma committee has raised. At two specific issues, we're going to look at that in much more detail and hopefully be able to talk to the law minister as well on how the government plans to take this forward. So do join us tomorrow. In fact, do write to us and tell us which top two issues you'd like to see discussed in more detail. We will try and read as much of the report as we can by tomorrow itself. Thank you for joining us tonight. Goodbye.